I found his second phone on our anniversary. What I did next took everything from him. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 38 years old. And on the night of my 12th wedding anniversary, I found a phone. Not my phone, not our shared family phone. A second phone. Hidden inside the inner pocket of my husband's gym bag, tucked beneath a rolled-up towel like it had been placed there by someone who had done it 100 times before. I want you to picture that moment with me. The anniversary dinner candles still burning on the dining table, the kids asleep upstairs. Me standing in our bedroom closet in my dress, holding a device that didn't belong in our marriage. The screen lit up in my hand, and the name at the top of the notification, "My love was not mine." Before I tell you everything, what I found, what I did, and how 12 years of lies unraveled in a single weekend, I want to ask you one thing. If you've ever trusted someone completely and then had that trust shatter in your hands like glass, stay with me, because this story is for you. Let me take you back to the beginning, because to understand what broke, you need to see what I thought I had. I met Daniel at 24. He was a structural engineer, methodical, patient, the kind of man who measured twice before cutting anything. I was a middle school art teacher. He made spreadsheets for vacation planning. I made vision boards. Somehow, it worked. We got married on a Saturday in October, outdoor ceremony, leaves everywhere, the kind of wedding that looks like a magazine cover and feels even better than it looks. We bought a house in a suburb outside Chicago when I was 28, a brick colonial with a backyard big enough for a vegetable garden I never quite managed to grow. We had 2 children, Lily, who was 10 at the time all of this happened, and our son Cooper, who was 7. They were the center of everything. Every decision we made, the neighborhood we chose, the schools we picked, the vacations we saved for it all, ran through them. Daniel was a good father. I want to say that clearly, even now. He coached Cooper's Little League team. He helped Lily with her science projects on Saturday mornings. He showed up, which is exactly why what came next took so long to see. The changes were small at first, so small I almost feel foolish admitting I missed them. He started going to the gym more, which at 39 seemed reasonable. He started working late, but he was up for a project lead position, so that made sense too. He started sleeping with his phone face down on the nightstand. I noticed that one. But I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I had a habit of looking for problems in things that were fine, and then came our anniversary. And if you think finding that phone was the worst moment of that night, you'd be wrong, because what I read on it was something I was not prepared for. Stay with me. Our 12th anniversary was on a Thursday. Daniel had made the reservation himself, a French restaurant downtown that we'd been to once, years ago, for a birthday. He ordered my favorite wine before I even opened the menu. He reached across the table and held my hand between courses. I remember thinking, this is what stability feels like. This is what building something with someone for 12 years feels like. We came home around 9. The babysitter, a college girl from the next street over, left. We checked on the kids. We changed clothes. Daniel said he was going to jump in the shower. He set his gym bag on the bench at the foot of our bed. I was hanging up my dress in the closet, and I saw it. The gym bag was half open. His regular phone was sitting on the nightstand. I could see it from where I stood. But something silver caught the light inside the bag's inner pocket. A corner of a case. The wrong shade of gray. I didn't think. I just reached in. The phone was an older model. No Face ID, just a 4-digit passcode. I knew his passcode for everything. We'd shared passwords for years, streaming accounts, the kids' school portal, banking. It was just how we worked. I typed in our anniversary date. It opened. The text thread with "My love was" at the top. It had been active that day. The last message sent was time-stamped at 6:47 p.m., 40 minutes before Daniel picked me up for our anniversary dinner. I read it. I won't tell you every word. Some things don't need to be repeated out loud. But what I'll tell you is this. It wasn't casual. It wasn't a mistake. The thread went back 14 months. 14 months. Lily's 5th grade science fair. Cooper's first lost tooth, Christmas morning, spring break, my birthday in March, 14 months of our life running alongside something I knew nothing about. I stood in that closet for what felt like a very long time. The shower was still running in the bathroom. I could hear the water. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. I stood at the sink, looking out at the backyard where Daniel had taught Cooper to throw a baseball last summer, and I made a decision that changed everything. I was not going to react, not that night. Some people would have confronted him right there, and part of me, the part that was shaking at that kitchen sink, wanted to. But I'd learned something about myself over 12 years of marriage. When I'm emotional, I react. When I'm calm, I think. And I needed to think. Because what I was about to uncover went much deeper than one phone. I slept next to Daniel that night. I don't know how. I lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe, and felt like I was lying next to a stranger wearing my husband's face. In the morning, I made breakfast. I packed the kids' lunches. I kissed Daniel on the cheek when he left for work and said, "Have a good day." He said, "You too, babe." The moment the door closed, I sat down at the kitchen table and pulled out my laptop. I'm a planner by nature. It's not something people associate with artists, but I've always been organized. Budgets, schedules, logistics, I handle all of it in our household, which meant I knew exactly where to look. I started with our shared bank accounts. We had 3, a joint checking, a joint savings, and a family credit card. I went back 18 months. What I found wasn't dramatic. No single large withdrawal, no obvious hotel charges with obvious names. Daniel was careful, but patterns don't lie. Monthly charges to a parking garage downtown that was 4 blocks from his office, but not near any client sites he'd ever mentioned. A restaurant charge every 3rd Thursday, always between $90 and $140, always paid on the family card, always logged in his expense reports as client dinner. I counted 11 of those Thursday dinners over 14 months. I had never been to a single one. I called my closest friend Renee that afternoon. We'd known each other since college. She lived 40 minutes away and had been through her own divorce 3 years earlier. She drove over without asking a single question. She sat across from me at that kitchen table and looked at everything I'd printed out. Then she looked up and said, "Sarah, you need a lawyer before you say a single word to him." I hadn't even thought that far ahead. I was still at the part where I was trying to decide if what I knew was real. Renee reached across and squeezed my hand. "It's real," she said, "and you are going to be okay. But first, lawyer, then confrontation, in that order." I followed Renee's advice. I called a family law attorney the next morning, and what that attorney told me in the first 10 minutes of our consultation, about the house, about the accounts, about my legal position, I wish someone had told me years earlier, because I almost walked into that confrontation with nothing, and that would have been a very different story. Her name was Karen Abrams, family law attorney, 17 years of practice, an office in Oak Park with a waiting room full of quiet, careful women. I sat across from her with my folder of printed bank statements and told her everything. The phone, the texts, the Thursday dinners, the 14 months. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked 3 questions. "Is the house in both your names?" "Yes." "Is your income documented? Tax returns, pay stubs?" "Yes." "Have you spoken to him about this yet?" "No." She nodded slowly. Then she said something I wrote down in the Notes app on my phone right there in her office. The spouse who prepares first almost always has the stronger position, not because the law rewards them, but because they make decisions from clarity instead of from pain. We talked for an hour. She explained what documentation I needed to gather. She explained Illinois divorce law, equitable distribution, child custody considerations, what marital assets actually meant in legal terms. She told me I did not need to confront Daniel yet. that I could take 2 weeks to get my documents in order before saying a single word. I left that office feeling something I hadn't expected to feel. Not power exactly, not anger, clarity. For the first time since I found that phone, I felt like I could see the road ahead of me. I spent the next 10 days being the best version of the wife Daniel thought he still had. And every single day, while I made dinner and helped with homework and smiled across the breakfast table, I was building something he didn't know was coming. If you've ever had to hold yourself completely still while everything inside you was screaming, you already know exactly how that feels. I gathered every document Karen had asked for: tax returns for the past 4 years, pay stubs, the mortgage paperwork, our retirement accounts, both his 401k statements and my teacher's pension documents, life insurance policies, the kids' savings accounts I had opened in my name when they were born. I made copies of everything and stored them in a folder at Renee's house. I also did one more thing, something Karen hadn't specifically asked for, but that I knew I needed for myself. I went back through 4 years of our family calendar, the shared Google Calendar we use to track everything, and I matched the dates: the Thursday client dinners, a weekend conference Daniel had attended in Indianapolis last spring, a Saturday in November when he said he was golfing with colleagues. I won't say what I found in detail, but I'll say this: the picture that emerged was not a moment of weakness. It was a second life, parallel and deliberate. The hardest part of those 10 days wasn't the gathering or the documenting or even the sleeping next to him at night. The hardest part was Lily. She came into the kitchen one Thursday evening while I was cooking dinner, a Thursday of all nights, and rappy. Her arms around me from behind and said, "Mom, you seem sad lately. Are you okay?" I turned around and hugged her tight. I said, "I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm just tired." She pulled back and looked at me with those serious 10-year-old eyes, the ones that see more than you want them to, and said, "Okay, but you can tell me if you're not." I held it together until she went upstairs, and then I stood at the kitchen sink, in the same spot where I'd stood the night I found the phone, and I let myself cry for exactly 5 minutes. Then I dried my face, turned the burner back up, and finished making dinner, because that's what you do when 2 kids are counting on you to hold steady. On the 11th day, I was ready. I asked Renee to take the kids for the night. I made sure Daniel would be home early, and I set the conversation up in a way that gave him one single chance to be honest. Just one. What happened next, the way he responded in that first 60 seconds, told me everything I needed to know about who he actually was. It was a Friday evening. Renee picked up Lily and Cooper at 4, took them to her house for a sleepover. She texted me when she had them settled. "They're good. You've got this." Daniel came home at 6. I was sitting at the kitchen table, no dinner cooking, just me and a cup of tea and a folder closed in front of me. He walked in, set his work bag down, and looked at me. Something in my face must have been different because he stopped moving. "Sarah, what's going on?" I said. "Sit down, Daniel." He sat. I slid the printed phone photo across the table. Renee had helped me screenshot the contact name and part of the thread without the full content, just enough to show I had seen it. He looked at it. I watched every muscle in his face, and then he said, "And I want you to hear this." He said, "How did you get this?" Not, "I can explain." Not, "It's not what it looks like." Not, "I'm so sorry." How did you get this? In that moment, something inside me that had still been hoping, that small, stubborn place that had been quietly praying there was an explanation, went completely still. I folded my hands on the table. I kept my voice level. "That's your question?" I said. "After 12 years, that's your first question?" He looked down. His jaw was working. He couldn't find the words. "I know about the phone," I said. "I know about the Thursday dinners. I know about Indianapolis. You have one chance to be honest with me right now. One."
He was quiet for almost a full minute. Then he said, "It's been over for 3 months." I had prepared for anger. I had prepared for denial. I had prepared for tears, maybe, or an apology. I had not prepared for that sentence, because that sentence told me he thought the problem was the affair, and not the 12 months before those last 3 months. Not the parallel life. Not our children asleep in other people's houses across the city while their father sat here telling me the problem was already solved. I picked up my folder. I stood up. I said, "I've already spoken to an attorney. I'll be filing for divorce. I'd like you to sleep in the guest room starting tonight." He tried to stop me. He asked for time, for counseling, for another chance. And there was a version of me, the version who had made breakfast that morning and kissed him on the cheek for 11 days straight, who might have listened. But that woman was already gone. And what I did over the next 4 weeks is the part of this story I want every woman to hear. I filed for divorce 13 days after that conversation. Karen Abrams had everything prepared, because I had spent 10 days making sure she did. The process wasn't clean or quick. Divorce with children rarely is. There were attorneys on both sides and mediators and forms and more conversations than I want to count. But here's what I want to tell you, because this is the part that matters. Daniel had assumed, I think, that I would come back to the table, that the kids would pull me back, that the mortgage would pull me back, that 12 years of shared history would pull me back. He didn't know I had spent 10 days not reacting. I had spent 10 days building. Because I walked into that process with documentation. I walked in with clarity about our assets. I walked in knowing exactly what my legal position was. I won't give you numbers, but I will tell you, I kept the house. The one with the brick exterior and the backyard and the garden I never quite managed to grow. The one where my daughter still does her homework at the kitchen table and my son still throws a baseball against the back fence. I kept the house, and the kids' primary residence stayed with me. And Daniel moved into an apartment 20 minutes away. He calls on Tuesday nights and every other weekend. He shows up. He is still a decent father, even if he is no longer my husband. I don't say that to be kind. I say it because it's true, and the truth is important, even when it's complicated. The legal part was one chapter, but what nobody tells you is that the hardest chapter comes after. When the paperwork is signed and the house is quiet and it's just you and your kids and the version of your life you have to build from scratch. That part is where I found something I hadn't expected to find. Stay with me just a little longer. It has been 14 months since the divorce was finalized. I want to tell you that it got easier immediately. That would be a better story. The truth is, the first winter was hard. The house felt too quiet at night. I second-guessed myself on Tuesdays when the kids were with their dad and I sat in a house I'd fought for that suddenly felt very large. But spring came, and I planted a garden. Not a metaphor, an actual garden. Tomatoes, basil, some zucchini that got completely out of control. Lily helped me map it out on graph paper on a Saturday morning in March. Cooper dug the holes with a plastic shovel meant for beach trips. That garden became the thing we did together that first year. Something small and alive and ours. I went back to school at night, started a master's program in art education, something I had talked about for years and somehow never done. I relearned what it felt like to make decisions for myself. Small ones first, paint colors, furniture arrangement, saying yes to things I'd always deferred on, and slowly, not quickly, not cleanly, but slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Not the version of myself that existed inside that marriage, something older than that, something that had been there before the brick colonial and the shared bank accounts and the anniversary dinners. Last October, on a Thursday evening, I sat at the kitchen table where I had confronted Daniel, where I had found my folder and my voice and my clarity, and I helped Cooper with his math homework while Lily read in the other room. The house was warm. The garden was already dormant for the season, but I could see the bare patches through the kitchen window where things would come back in the spring. Lily wandered in around 8:30. She stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at me in a way I hadn't seen before. "Mom," she said. "Yeah, Lil?" She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "You seem happy." I looked up at her. This girl with her serious eyes and her habit of seeing more than I want her to. I said, "I am." And I meant it, to everyone listening tonight. If you are sitting in a life that is quieter than it should be, if you are making excuses for something you already know, if you are waiting for someone to give you permission to trust what you've seen with your own eyes, you don't need permission. You just need a folder, and a friend like Renee, and the willingness to hold yourself still, long enough to think clearly. That's all I had, and it was enough. Thank you for sitting with me tonight. If this story reached you, if any part of it felt familiar, leave me a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what part stayed with you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. I'll be here next time with another story, another voice, another woman who found her way through. Take care of yourselves. If you made it to the end, thank you. You can find more stories on this channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment below. I read every single one.